NBC's Marissa Parra is joining us live in Tallahassee, and also with us, Jillian Snyder, retired New York police officer and adjunct lecturer at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. Marissa, what's the latest there on campus this morning?
Well, Anna, it is chilling to see that video of how different the campus looked just 24 hours ago. And what we're seeing right now is the aftermath, the day after. You can probably see over my shoulder here, students are lined up. And this is just outside of the Student Union building. This is still considered an active crime scene. But what we have right now are students waiting to reclaim their belongings. Of course, this is an active crime scene, so they're going to be led in by deputies, by authorities into what is, again, still an active crime scene. Classes still canceled throughout the remainder of the day here, and students are being asked to avoid these buildings unless they need to reclaim their belongings. And so we're learning more about the suspect and the investigation as people here are still very much grieving. I want to take you to what we heard yesterday in the aftermath. Again, you mentioned, Anna, we're learning the suspect is the stepson of a local sheriff's deputy. Here's more of what we're hearing.
Unfortunately, her son had access to one of her weapons. And that was one of the weapons that was found at the scene. The alleged shooter was also a long-standing member of the Leon County Sheriff's Office Citizen Advisory or Youth Advisory Council. So he has been steeped in the Leon County Sheriff's Office family, engaged in a number of training programs that we have. So it's not a surprise to us that he had access to weapons.
And our understanding, what we are hearing from sources, an FBI official told NBC News that the suspect was originally named Christian Gunnar Erickson and had his name changed in June of 2020 to Phoenix Eichner. We're also learning more from people who say that they knew the suspect at various points in his life. This coming from the Tallahassee State College Political Discourse Club, telling NBC News that the suspect had attended meetings and had, quote, made people feel uncomfortable because of far-right views. One member had described the suspect as a, quote, fascist, and Eichner had been asked to leave the club as a result. Of course, we're still piecing together what we know about the suspect. Authorities clearly still doing the same here, Anna.
Marissa Parra with the latest from Tallahassee. Thank you. Jillian, your reaction to learning the suspect is the son of law enforcement and apparently had access to her weapon, according to the local officials.
I will say, in all honesty, I'm very shocked and surprised and upset by it. But what I think we need to recognize is that this was a motivated offender. So regardless of who he knew or who his family was, this was someone who had planned something and who wanted to carry it out. So all of that is going to unfold in the coming days. I'm sure we're going to learn more. As Marissa said, people have been discussing his ideology, clubs he went to. The sheriff's office had talked about him being part of the youth advisory. That is all secondary and supplemental to understanding his, in fact, motivation for this.
Yeah, so that detail did strike me as well, that a fellow student told NBC News the suspect had espoused white supremacist views in a political discussion group. Is that something that would have put him on the radar of law enforcement at some point?
That would be, especially if it happened on campus, that would be something that if reported by the other club members to campus security, it would have been something that could have engaged in intervention of sorts. Because he's an adult, it does make it more likely that it wouldn't be reported to a parent immediately. But I do think that if students on campus were saying that, you know, he was using language that made them uncomfortable or using language that could incite any kind of violence, my thought would be there should be some reporting to the campus security or campus police.
And do you think his parent could be held accountable? Again, this is the son of a sheriff's deputy and had access to her weapon, with the sheriff saying that weapon was found at the scene.
Well, I'm not ready to speculate, and there's been no report of how he gained access to that weapon. Every police department in the country has rules and regulations and guidelines for their officers and deputies to follow. That is pertaining to how to safeguard your weapon when you are at home. So not knowing or being familiar with this agency's guidelines, it would be too early for me to say whether or not there's any liability or accountability there.
Always appreciate your insights and expertise. Jillian Snyder, thanks for joining us. And now I want to bring in Democratic Florida State Senator Jason Pizzo. Senator, our hearts are with you and your community today. I understand 2 of your interns were at the university when the lockdown occurred. How are they this morning?
They're good. We stayed nearby until they were safely returned to their dorms. They're understandably, shaken up by what happened and how this has sort of become normalized.
Can you describe what it felt like to be there during the lockdown?
So we were at what's called the Sweet Shop. There were about 50 students and some parents also visiting directly across the street from one of the main entrances to the university. And while we're here at the Capitol, I mean, FSU is less than a mile that way. You can see the historic Capitol behind me. We're in the Senate office building right now. When the FSU alert went out, we're doing a head count and roll call to find out where everyone is. We have 40 senators here with interns from from a number of universities. And immediately I had one from Senator Berman's office down the hall that was on campus, and another one of our interns as well, and one of our previous legislative aides who was in the law school classroom. So you do an immediate head count. I was a Manhattan resident during 9/11. It was the same thing. We had StarTech Motorola's feverishly calling our friends who we knew were downtown. So we do the same thing. We just tell everybody to relax. We ask where they are. One was locked down in a classroom. Another one was locked down in an office space. Law enforcement's reaction was almost immediate and pervasive. And then I was able to sort of in real time in contact with Florida Highway Patrol and the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, let the students know inside of the little restaurant shop that we were in, and their parents know that the threat had been neutralized.
I heard from one student who was there on campus talking about how drills they did in high school were then, reinforced in this situation. They jumped into action. I mean, sadly, that's the state we live in. There are so many of these stories we have had to cover. There have been 81 mass shootings so far this year, according to the Gun Violence Archive. And several of the students at FSU, of course, lived in Parkland during the 2018 mass shooting that killed 17 people. In 2014, there was another shooting at the FSU campus. I've heard you mention before how every 36 hours there's a shooting in your district. How do we stop this?
It's definitely a lack of mental health resources and being able to connect basically as neighbors. And I teach 7th grade civics classes whenever I visit, a pretty simple concept of a bullseye that you and who you love is in the center of your universe and where you live. And then it's your neighborhood, your city, your county, your state, and your federal government. While all the kids are just sort of sitting in their phones and not being able to make eye contact with each other and have personal relationships, we need to connect with our neighbors. We need to know who lives next door, left and right. And we don't do that. We just identify each other by who we voted for in the last election. And instead, not to make it political, I've done college tours from the panhandle of Florida down to the southernmost tip. And what I'm noticing is kids just don't engage with one another. I think they're afraid to report things that they find or they perceive. They don't want to rat anybody out or be a snitch. They can't do so anonymously. And the laws of Florida are really not there to protect and promote neighborhood kind of viability. It's just a reality. You can't make a complaint against a neighbor anonymously anymore in the state of Florida pursuant to law. And we really just need to connect with one another and talk things through and talk about these things. We're going to find out more details. I think I have more details that I don't want to sort of offer right now and speculate on, but we're going to find out that, per se, there's a mental health issue. There's, strong emotional feelings and problems. This is the stepson of a Leon County sheriff. Obviously the details are going to come out, but it would be prudent not to spend and expend efforts on trying to rationalize and excuse what happened and really get to the root cause of the problem, regardless of who did it.